Hi guys, MrRoflWaffles here. Since I last made a video about DLC 4 teasers, there have been 2 released. One just now, which is really exciting that I can't wait to get to, and the other was yesterday. And the reason I didn't make a video is that on its own, it didn't really say all that much, but it's important to include it in the conversation now, so we're going to briefly touch on it before we get to today's really juicy one.
I've known some of you for a long time. The others, well, kind of feels that way too.
So, I think that the interesting thing about this teaser is not actually what Tank is saying, because it's pretty kind of generic dialogue that doesn't really tell us very much at all. He's basically saying, I've only just met some of you, even though you're other versions of us, and so we've kind of already known each other, and that's basically the same sort of shtick that we've been going through at every juncture when Ultimus and Primus have been interacting. So, that's really no surprise. The more interesting thing is what we're actually seeing on the screen, the visuals here. We've already seen the characters in the forest, right? Primus and Ultimus having their kind of last supper almost before going forth into the Great War. They're on the brink of victory, and they're there, and the location seems to be being carried forward now into a slightly different environment. This is seemingly a continuation of that same kind of theme that Treyarch were running with, except now you can see there's some snow. It looks a little chilly. There's a kind of red, really warm, eerie light that's being cast onto everything. This almost looks like the sort of thing that you might expect to see in Revelations. It's kind of that red-blue color palette, which is odd because the forest for so long has been almost neutral ground. And now, if the forest is being depicted and then they're moving out a little bit of the forest, maybe they're going on a little bit of a trek through the forest to the forest's edge, and then we're getting to this place where they're setting up a new camp and they're making all their food and they're doing their cooking, and things are getting a little chillier and a little snowier. And this ties directly in with what we see in this next teaser, and that's why I wanted to really mention it before we got started. So I'm going to play the next one for you now. First, focus on the visuals, and then we'll talk about the audio.
We created Ascension on the principle of being better men, of making this world a better place. If this blood is key to unlocking the future, we would be fools to not take this opportunity.
So visually here, we are seeing again that same kind of almost Revelations color palette that I mentioned a moment ago. You've got the fact that there's this kind of sunset slash sunrise, pinkish, orangish, reddish hue in the sky, red sky at night and all that. And then you've got the blue of the 115 plants or whatever the hell this is, kind of working its way through the rock here. And amongst it all, you have the snow, the frost, the chilly rocks. It's really cool to see that we are slowly progressing towards, presumably, the setting in which Call of the Dead as a remade map is going to actually happen. We could all dream up our own versions of a remade Call of the Dead, I'm sure, but I do think they would all look slightly different, and it's cool now to see that Treyarch are basically saying, this is what it's going to be like. This is the aesthetic that we're going for, this is the color palette that we're using, and this is the location for the end of this journey. I've also seen some people saying that this looks like the actual Call of the Dead waterfall near spawn, which could be pretty nuts. I'm not 100% if that's what we're seeing right now, but I do think it's possible. It also is now pretty neat that there's a focus on the Siberia facility. It's a nice way of closing the loop, per se, because of the fact that the Siberia facility is near the Tunguska River. And, I mean, Tunguska has been elemental. It's been so important in the story from the very beginning, and the fact that Treyarch might be playing with that idea as a way of closing things out as well is just really beautiful to me. I think that that is a really nice way of coming full circle. With that said, let's talk about the damn audio, because I know you guys have questions, and I think I've got some answers. So the question is that the voice of Pablo Marinus? And the answer I would say is absolutely not. I don't think it's Pablo at all. Pablo is Mexican. This is not a Mexican accent, it's Russian. And they're talking about the Ascension group, which places us firmly in the kind of ballpark of only really 2 or 3 characters total that could actually be present here. The first person that I've seen people speculating about is Yuri. Yuri obviously was mixed up with Classified. I mean, how could he not be even though he wasn't present in the map necessarily, and we also learned more about him in Alpha Omega as well. Yuri is someone that clearly is mixed up in the current storytelling that Treyarch is doing, and so maybe this is his voice. But I don't think it's Yuri. If you listen to what Yuri sounds like, I'll play an example now, their voices just don't match up in my opinion.
We created Ascension on the principle of being better men, of making this world a better place.
Thank God they did not take the diary. The things I've learned about Element 1. I'll have to conduct this research on my own, away from the destructive hands of Gersh. His research into Project Mercury has stalled, but will he be transferred? I doubt it. As long as Project remains on track, his friends, I must start small.
The next best guess would be Gersh. Gersh, again, is a character who has been really kind of floating around in the story for a while, but without really clear reasons as to why. The fact that Gersh is so heavily featured in Gorod Krovi and talks the way he does, it's just bizarre. But again, if we listen to what Gersh sounds like, I don't think this is his voice.
We created Ascension on the principle of being better men, of making this world a better place.
I am pleased to report that all projects are running smoothly again after recent personnel changes. As I had previously mentioned, Yuri Zavoysky is a brilliant scientist, but he has so far proven incapable of handling Project Mercury, or as you call it, the Gersh device. So, due to numerous delays and setbacks, I have sadly been forced to transfer Yuri to the 8K64-A experiments.
I think the person we're listening to here is Harvey Yena, who's honestly one of the oldest, longest-standing characters in the zombie storyline, but nobody ever talks about him. Which is funny that. It's funny because Harvey Yena, Hyena, H. Yena, is actually based on one of the original Zombies devs from way back in the day. Like, you guys remember Mark Maestas, who's been featured more prominently actually recently in a couple of the Treyarch kind of streams and stuff like that. He's been taking a little bit more of a spotlight while Jason Blundell has kind of faded into the background a little bit. And now, all of a sudden, I think Harvey Yena might be being really brought into the spotlight here for DLC 4. The story of Harvey Yena is one that is shrouded in mystery. We honestly don't know a huge amount about this character, certainly compared to Gersh and Yuri, who are the two sort of closest relations to Harvey in terms of where he fits in the story. The thing that I think really seals the deal here about this being Harvey Yena is the fact that he's talking about creating Ascension in order to become better men. Now, this makes perfect sense for Harvey's story specifically, because it was him specifically that formed the Ascension group. Yuri and Gersh were not founding members of the group, and so it would be strange for them to be making this kind of pronouncement, having not actually been there in the first place. Also, if you take a look at the story of those characters and you think about it in the context of the reality of World War II, the way that it's being worded here makes sense as well. Harvey Yena was a Group 935 scientist. He was working for the Germans during World War II. And after World War II, once Group 935 had been disbanded, the Soviets and the Americans basically swept into Germany and started trying to essentially pillage the scientific resources in the form of both the actual scientists and the research left in the country. Now, we've talked about the massacre at Deriz, the standoff at Deriz before. We've talked about Richtoven's diary being one item that was recovered, and Richtoven's diary is very much interwoven in the story of Gersh and Yuri like I talked about before. But amongst all of that other stuff going on, the Pentagon started hiring scientists to bring them into their own research programs. And with the Americans doing that, you can absolutely expect that the Russians were doing it too, and one of their hires was Harvey Yena. It was that hire that caused the forming of the Ascension group. And so the fact that a man that was working for the Germans during the war and has now switched sides and gone over to the Russians, to the Soviets, the fact that he is saying that he is forming this group on the principle of becoming better men, it just makes a lot of moral sense. I also think that this might be why, and this might be me just kind of trying to explain a bit of a silly thing away, but I think this is also why the accent, the voice acting for this character is pretty tragic in my opinion. It really sounds like an American trying to do a Russian accent. And you could kind of argue that away by saying that, well, I mean, Harvey was working for the Germans, now he's working for the Russians. Like, this kind of stuff goes back and forth and that might have affected his accent somewhat. That's one of the looser ideas in this theory, but certainly the forming of the Ascension group was on him. The most interesting part, I think, of Harvey Yena's history actually came in Gorod Krovi, which is really weird to think about because it's something that I don't think I've ever really talked about on this channel because at the time, it didn't feel like massively significant information. I might have made a video and read the letter, but I don't think I really did anything beyond that because it seemed like Treyarch were just doing that thing that they were doing in Black Ops 3 of touching on all the points of the story and saying, hey, we remember that this happened. Here's a bit of fan service, but then not necessarily digging much deeper beyond that. It turns out that potentially I was wrong, and this letter that I'm about to read could end up being a little more significant than any of us realized. The letter begins addressed to General Lemkool, which is interesting because one of the Treyarch devs, one of, I think, the map directors during Black Ops 3, and one of the main producers, I think, now at the studio is a guy called Corky Lemkool. So just like how so many of the other devs have kind of inserted themselves into the story in little places in a way that doesn't really disrupt the narrative, it's just like a namesake, Corky seems to have done that here as well. So General Lemkool is how it starts. The Dragons continue to bring success on the Eastern Front. Russian resistance is fierce, but we are maintaining a stronghold in Stalingrad. There are rumors of a new push to retake the city, but I'm confident they will be stopped. The hatchery continues to experiment with ways to enhance the beasts even further. Group 935 will not be technologically outpaced by the Russians. So obviously this is during World War II. I should make that clear in case any of you were confused. And at this point, he is still working for 935. Die Glock research continues to inspire new theories of time displacement and possibly even movement across dimensions. Security has been enhanced, especially after the disaster that was enabled by Dr. Groff's lax security measures. We have taken steps to ensure that none of this technology falls into enemy hands, which is kind of ironic seeing as he would fall into enemy hands and start working for them in just a couple of years' time. However, I feel I must protest the behavior of this insufferable apparatus that we have been forced to contend with. Sophia, as it likes to be called, has demanded that we change the password to an encrypted cipher consisting entirely of unintelligible characters for maximum security. The current method is sufficiently secure without getting in the way of researchers performing their duties. Even if someone were able to obtain one of the special code cylinders, they would still need to know the password. While it is possible it could be guessed, it is easy for our researchers to remember due to its associations to our Die Glock research. Still, I feel it is sufficiently obscure that no one should be able to guess it easily. Respectfully yours, Harvey Yena. That is such an interesting message to me. So damn interesting, especially in the context of what we know in 2019. Going back and reading this, we have a really different perspective on what's going on here. The fact that Harvey has done this research, he has been in the trenches amongst these ideas, temporal displacement, even traveling to different dimensions. And then Treyarch in 2019, teasing DLC 4, has given us a teaser with the caption, "The way through will be revealed," when we've just been talking about the guy that's been researching interdimensional travel. That seems like a hint. The way through, as well, is really interesting wording because when else have we seen that said on the walls of Classified? Specifically, you've got the golden rod, what we originally thought was the focusing stone, and a stepped pyramid. But I think that there's a good chance that isn't the focusing stone after all, and it's actually the elemental shard. So the golden rod and the elemental shard are going to show us the way through, and Treyarch are now reinforcing that just before we get to DLC 4. Sounds like, seeing as we now have that elemental shard, the golden rod is the thing that we need to secure. And where better a place to do that than Call of the Damn Dead? I said this in a video the other day. I said that that was my theory for what would be happening here, and I think that this is only more evidence in favor of it. I don't think that the characters brought it back with them from the moon, for example. I don't think that they've got it from DE somehow. I just don't think that that's what's happened. I think that the rod needs to be secured, and it's going to be secured once they get to this map. It doesn't end there as well. There's actually more evidence backing it up. So when we were getting the teasers for that story trailer, the intro cutscene for the map, which, by the way, doesn't seem to be called A Light in the Darkness. That was just the name of the trailer, but will be releasing on a Monday, which is very, very weird. There was one teaser that the caption of was really important, but the kind kind of got glossed over a little bit. With this power, it says, and the means to control it, we can go wherever we choose. I think that the power is the shard, the means to control it is the golden rod, it's kind of like a focusing instrument, a tuning instrument, and the wherever we choose will be the ether or wherever they need to go to fight Dr. Monty. That isn't something that I think they are doing yet, and the fact that in that teaser, in that story trailer rather, we got a load of the lines that Treyarch had been teasing, like a load of those tweet captions included as speech in there, but then one of them we didn't get, seems extremely mysterious, right? It's almost like there's another story teaser coming, another full video, some kind of series of memory segments or something that we've been kind of getting excerpts from, it seems, on Twitter already, that may well give us more information about all of this. Cycling back to the letter as well, Sophia was a character that was instrumental in the defeat of the Shadow Man in the first place, right? It was Sophia in combination with the Chronorium, kind of, that basically actually defeated him. And if Sophia was so important then, maybe she's going to be important again this time around. Maybe. I think that there's a chance that we actually learn more about Phoebe and her relationship with Peter McCain. I have a whole video talking about that. I feel like that might be the 2019 Black Ops 4 equivalent of what we saw with Sophia, but Sophia is being indirectly brought up again here just by being associated with Yena, because Yena has so little that's actually out there in terms of info that we can go off of. One of the big things that is amongst that stuff is Sophia's inclusion. Then, in the same breath, pretty much, as Sophia getting mentioned, we hear about Die Glock research. I mean, it's nostalgic as hell, man. We're really going back to where this all began with flying saucers, anti-gravity, 115 in its purest form, all of the research during World War II that the Germans were doing to try and get ahead and not be technologically outpaced by the Russians, as is said in the letter. It's the origins of the zombie storyline. It really is. And I am excited by it so much to see these old references coming up in ways that just feed my imagination. I just want to know more, man. So that's all great. That's all really nice. But we haven't even talked about the fact that Treyarch are talking about blood again. Oh my god, why? Why? I thought we were done with this, Treyarch. God damn it. So the blood is back. The blood here is being talked about in the context of, I mean, he says, if it's the key to unlocking the future, we would be fools to not take the opportunity. I mean, it's a pretty overt reference to the fact that Treyarch are really intent on blood being the most important kind of life force that's going to unlock certain types of travel to different dimensions, different places, and also prevent universes being closed off in the case of Monty in Revelations, or preserve certain characters' lives in existence and stuff as well. It's really important to remember that during the Zombies comic, it is the Victis blood, that blood sequence, SSMJABR, which allows those characters to travel to the empty Earth and to secure the Chronorium. That's the only reason they are able to do that. That is what allows them to unlock part of the future. And since then, blood has again been used in Blood of the Dead. Well, that's a funny name choice that they went with there. Gorod Krovi, City of Blood, by the way. But in that map, it is Richtofon's blood that powers the infernal machine, the Dark Mechanism, which we again saw referenced fairly recently in the intro cutscene for Alpha Omega in a way that was kind of disjointed with the map and is still worth some discussion to this day. Typically though, when blood has been mentioned, it's in the context of some of our characters, like our playable characters, Victis or Primus really, and that's pretty much it. And it doesn't spread too far beyond that. Like the blood vials are, in a way, quite a personal thing. Whereas here, Harvey Yena, a researcher, is talking about blood unlocking the key to the future. Is this going to be a really big, strong theme in Call of the Dead? Or is this just going to be something that is basically them unlocking a door and entering the way through to that end cutscene? I mean, I suspect that during the Easter egg for this map, there may well be some kind of involvement of blood itself as a resource, which is going to be really interesting to see how Treyarch kind of slots it into an Easter egg and to a kind of story in that way. I also would be remiss to not mention the fact that in that letter, Harvey Yena is working on the hatchery, right? He's working on dragons. He's researching all of that stuff. What did we see in a teaser the other day for DLC 4? Samantha's drawings. What does one of Samantha's drawings show her doing? Riding a dragon. I'm just going to repeat that really quickly. Samantha, who rode a dragon in a drawing she drew 3 years ago, over 3 years now, is now being teased again. Her drawings are being teased again, and the person that is working on the research for the dragons on which she would be riding are being teased again. What does that say to you? What does that say to you guys? That says to me, there could be a goddamn dragon in Call of the Dead. Mate. Huh? That would be insane. That would be so bonkers if there's actual dragons in this map, and I think it could happen, man. I really think it could happen. Samantha is pivotal to the story. It is clear. She was at the beginning. She had a bit of a kind of background job in the middle when everything else was kind of going on and took the spotlight and took the focus, but now she is back at the forefront, and she likes dragons. She wants to ride a dragon. She foretold that she was going to ride a dragon. Samantha, of all characters, knows an awful lot about finding the way through, seeing as she's been through that very journey many times at this point. I'm just saying, dragons in DLC 4. You heard it here first, man. You heard it here first. You want any more evidence of this? What did the teaser yesterday say? What did that caption say? It said memories will burn, guys. It actually said memories will burn. Just saying. So, do you think that it's Harvey, or do you disagree? Do you think it's Gersh or Yuri? Let me know in the comments down below. I think I've got a pretty strong case here, and I think a lot of people are going to just assume that it's Gersh or Yuri, but I really don't think it is. And I love that. I love the fact that it's not the obvious choice, it's not the obvious option. There's someone else that's being brought into the fold who's still important, but for different reasons, and that is a bit of an enigma. So thanks, Treyarch, for a more mysterious teaser. I've been waiting for one of these. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. If you have, then definitely leave a like. This is a 10-year secret at this point that Treyarch has really been drawing out, but I am very hungry to get the next piece of this puzzle. So thanks for being here. Like I've said, I'm MrRoflWaffles. Drop a like if you've enjoyed, and subscribe for more zombies, teasers, and trailers in the future. Bye for now.